Katie stood at the kitchen sink, her slender fingers wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug filled with lukewarm coffee. Sunlight spilled across the tiled floor, catching the flecks of gold in her auburn hair as she stared out the window. The backyard was peaceful this time of morning, dew still clinging to the grass, the old swing swaying gently in the breeze. It was the kind of view that used to calm her. Now, it only reminded her how much effort it took to pretend. From the outside, Katie and Roger Halston had the kind of life that inspired envy. They lived in a beautiful colonial-style home on a quiet, tree-lined street in Connecticut. He was a senior architect at a prestigious design firm in Manhattan. She ran a successful online boutique that had started as a hobby after their second child was born. 2 kids, Noah, 9, and Lucy, 6, a Labrador named Buster, and just enough visible affection to keep the illusion going. But the cracks had started showing. Not in loud fights or slammed doors, but in the quieter, more dangerous ways. Conversations that ended too quickly. Glances that didn't linger. Secrets exchanged behind smiles. Katie sipped her coffee and felt the acid bloom in her stomach. She had once been madly in love with Roger. Their story had all the right beats. College sweethearts, backpacking through Europe, the rain-soaked kiss in Prague, the rushed courthouse wedding after finding out she was pregnant. But now, 15 years later, something felt off. And it had been for a while. It wasn't just the distance. It was the way he looked at her, like she was someone he used to know but couldn't quite place. Roger walked into the kitchen, dressed in a navy suit, knotting his tie in front of the mirror by the pantry. He barely glanced at her before reaching for his keys and murmuring, "Meeting downtown. I'll be back late." "Again," she said, more out of reflex than concern. He didn't answer, just offered a brief smile that didn't reach his eyes and stepped out the door. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. Katie set down her mug and stared after him. Her gut clenched with something she couldn't name yet, but it was getting harder to ignore. Later that day, Katie met Angelica for lunch at a cafe nestled in a cobblestone alley downtown. Angelica was everything Katie wasn't: bold, flirtatious, always dressed in sharp silhouettes that turned heads. Her heels clicked like punctuation as she walked into the cafe, red lips curled into a knowing smirk. "Katie, darling," Angelica purred, air-kissing both cheeks. "You look like you haven't slept in weeks." "I haven't," Katie admitted, stirring her tea. "Things are weird with Roger." Angelica arched a perfectly plucked brow. "Weird how?" "He's distant. Cold. He disappears for hours. I don't know if it's work or something else." Angelica tilted her head, fingers tapping the rim of her wine glass. "You ever think it might be something else? A woman, maybe." Katie blinked, caught off guard. "I know. I mean, he's not the type." "No one is," Angelica said, her voice soft but pointed. "Until they are." The words hit harder than Katie expected. They stayed with her on the drive home, echoing louder than the radio. She dismissed them. Angelica always leaned into the drama, but a seed of doubt had been planted. That night, Katie waited for Roger to come home. He arrived close to midnight, reeking faintly of cologne that wasn't his. She noticed the sheen of sweat at his temple, the slight tremble in his hand as he poured himself a drink. "You said it was a meeting," she said quietly, standing in the hallway in her robe. "It was," he replied, too fast. "You smell like perfume." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Someone in the elevator, maybe." They stared at each other, something fragile and terrible hanging between them. And for the first time, Katie realized she didn't believe him. Not even a little. And that was the beginning of the end. The next morning, Katie moved through the motions of motherhood and marriage like a sleepwalker. She packed Lucy's lunch with heart-shaped sandwiches, reminded Noah to grab his science project, smiled through the sleepy chaos of their morning routine. But beneath the calm exterior, her thoughts spun like a storm. Roger had already left by the time she came downstairs again. No goodbye. No coffee cup left in the sink. No note on the counter like he used to write when they were still finding reasons to love each other. The perfume still lingered in the air. Katie opened his closet while the kids were at school, pretending she was looking for a sweater she'd never find in there. Instead, she scanned his suits, his shoes, his belts, all lined up in perfect order. Roger was meticulous about appearances. But the more perfect something seemed, the more likely it was hiding a mess underneath. In the back pocket of his navy slacks, she found a receipt. The address wasn't one she recognized. Hotel Portico, Suite 914. One night stay. 2 glasses of Cabernet. Her breath caught in her throat. The receipt was dated just 2 nights ago, the same night Roger said he was working late at the firm. For a full minute, Katie didn't move. Her mind raced through excuses. Maybe it was for a client. Maybe he was helping a colleague. Maybe. But even her lies were weaker than the truth. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the receipt. She didn't cry. Not yet. Something colder was setting in, something heavier than sadness. That night, after the kids were in bed and the house fell quiet, she picked up her phone. Her thumb hovered over Angelica's name for a moment before she tapped call. Angelica answered on the third ring, her voice rich with amusement. "Did you find something?" Katie hesitated. "A hotel receipt." There was a brief pause, then the sound of a wine glass clinking. "Oh, sweetie. That's more than something. That's practically a confession." "I don't know what to do," Katie whispered. "Do I confront him? Do I wait? Do I?" "You don't wait," Angelica said, cutting through her panic with that icy confidence she wore like perfume. "You get smart. You watch. You gather what you need. Because if he is cheating, and let's be honest, he probably is, you want the upper hand when it all blows up." Katie felt sick. "I never thought I'd be the kind of person who has to gather evidence like I'm in some soap opera." Angelica chuckled. "Welcome to the real world. Love is messy. Marriage is war with vows. The smart ones survive by being 2 steps ahead. Have you ever been cheated on?" The laugh that came through the phone was sharp, bitter. "No, honey. I've always been the other woman." Katie's mouth went dry. Angelica never talked about her past, and now wasn't the time to ask. But the chill that slid down Katie's spine had nothing to do with Roger. Intriguing moment. The next day, while folding laundry, Katie found something odd tucked between the folded cuff of Roger's dress shirt, a keycard. It wasn't from the hotel portico. It was from somewhere else entirely, the Aubergine Club. She stared at the purple embossed lettering, her hand trembling slightly. She'd never heard of it. Curious, she typed it into her laptop. The search results were sparse. One link. No address. No reviews. Just a cryptic website that greeted her with, "For those who seek pleasure without consequences." There was no contact page. Only a login screen. She sat frozen, her breath shallow. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was something darker. More private. Hidden. And Roger had a key. The next day, Katie drove by the hotel portico. It was a sleek, modern building tucked between high-end boutiques and office towers. Discreet. Classy. The kind of place built for short secrets and long lies. She didn't go inside. She just sat across the street in her SUV, staring at the revolving doors. It was one thing to suspect, another to see. As she sat there, a sleek black BMW pulled into the hotel's private lot. Her stomach dropped when she saw him, Roger, wearing the same gray coat he'd left the house in that morning. He didn't go in through the main entrance. He used the side alley, like someone who knew exactly where he was going. Katie snapped a photo with trembling hands. When she got home, she poured herself a glass of wine and stared at the image on her phone. Her husband, disappearing behind a hotel door. No context. No excuses. Just silence. That night, she told Angelica everything. The receipt. The hotel. The photo. Angelica was quiet for once, then asked, "Do you want me to help?" "Help how?" Katie asked. "I have connections. People who can find things. People who can dig deeper. If you want the truth, I can get it for you." Katie hesitated. She didn't want to become someone who spied on her husband, who asked friends to pull strings like this was a movie. But then again, her life didn't feel real anymore either. It felt like a performance she wasn't even auditioning for. "I want to know," she said finally. "All of it." Angelica's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then let's find out just how deep this rabbit hole goes." Katie had no idea what she was about to uncover, but something inside her already knew. This wasn't just about cheating. It was about betrayal. The kind that rewrites everything you thought you knew. The keycard stayed on Katie's nightstand for 3 days. She couldn't bring herself to hide it or throw it away. It sat there like a silent dare, purple, mysterious, and humming with the weight of something she didn't understand. Each night, she stared at it before turning off the light. Each morning, she woke up hoping it would vanish on its own. But it didn't. And on the 4th day, she gave in. The Aubergine Club. The name itself sounded like something out of a noir film. Sexy. Ominous. Exclusive. The website was still a dead end, just that cryptic message and a login screen. No address. No map. No hint of what Roger had been doing there. She called Angelica. "Have you ever heard of something called the Aubergine Club?" Katie asked, her voice hushed, as if the name itself might trigger something. On the other end of the line, Angelica was quiet for a beat too long. Then, "Where did you hear that name?" I found a keycard. In Roger's shirt. Angelica exhaled. Jesus. I thought that place shut down years ago. You've been there. No, she said quickly. But I know people who have. Let's just say it's not the kind of place anyone goes for dinner and drinks. Then what is it? Another pause. Then Angelica said, it's a club, technically. But not the country club kind. You don't go unless someone invites you. It's all off the books. No paper trail. No names. Katie's chest tightened. What kind of club doesn't use names? The kind where people pretend they're someone else. Katie was silent, letting that land. The image of Roger, organized, predictable Roger, flashed through her mind. Then the flash shifted, replaced by something darker. A version of him she'd never seen, never even imagined. Can you get me in? She whispered. Angelica didn't hesitate. Yes. But once you go through those doors, there's no going back to the version of your life you think you know. Katie took a deep breath. I already passed that point. 3 nights later, Katie sat in her car outside a nondescript building in the industrial outskirts of the city. It was just past midnight. No sign. No lights in the windows. Just a black door and a small camera above it. Angelica had handled everything. A burner phone had arrived in the mail. A text message with an address. A warning. Wear black. No jewelry. Say nothing unless spoken to. And now, here she was. The purple keycard felt hot in her palm as she walked toward the door. Before she could knock, it clicked open. A man in a tailored black suit stepped aside wordlessly, his face unreadable. Inside, the air was thick with perfume, velvet, and something almost metallic. The hallway was long and narrow, lined with heavy curtains and flickering sconces. No music. Just the muffled sound of laughter, low, intimate, like it had weight. A second door opened into a vast, dim room glowing with candlelight. Plush furniture. Gilded mirrors. Masked attendants walking silently through the haze. And people, men and women, lounging in couples and clusters, sipping from crystal glasses, some in quiet conversation, others. Katie's breath hitched. Others were not just talking. She turned away quickly, her pulse pounding. This wasn't just a bar or a lounge. This was a world built on secrecy, on permission, on the illusion of freedom behind masks and champagne and locked phones at the door. Someone approached her, a woman in a sleek black dress, face hidden behind an intricate gold mask. You're new, the woman said. Her voice was smooth and practiced. Do you have a name? Katie hesitated. I'm Eden. The woman smiled, slow and approving. Very well, Eden. Follow me. Katie was led to a corner booth, half hidden by curtains. As she passed, she scanned faces, most of them covered, but then she stopped breathing. Across the room, leaning against the bar, was Roger. Unmasked, laughing, and standing far too close to him, touching his chest with polished nails and a practiced smile, was Angelica. Angelica. Her hair was slicked back, her lips painted crimson. She looked nothing like the breezy, sarcastic friend who had always known just the right thing to say. She looked like she belonged here. Katie's knees nearly buckled. She dropped into the booth, heart thundering. Her world shattered all over again, not because Roger was here. She had already suspected that. But Angelica, her friend, her confidant, the one she had trusted with every fear, every suspicion, was here too. And she wasn't spying. She was smiling at her husband. Katie sat frozen, mind spinning, the betrayal sinking deeper than any affair ever could. Because it wasn't just Roger keeping secrets. It was Angelica, too. And suddenly, Katie realized she hadn't just walked into a club. She had walked into a trap. To be continued in Part 4. Write the next part. ChatGPT. Part 4. Masks and Motives. Katie's hands gripped the edge of the velvet booth as though it might keep her from collapsing. Her entire body buzzed. Adrenaline, rage, confusion, heartbreak all crashing against each other like waves in a storm. Angelica's laugh floated across the room, unmistakable even here. Light. Effortless. It had always charmed her, lulled her into trusting too much. Katie watched her lean in closer to Roger, whispering something in his ear. He didn't pull away. He smiled. It was the smile that broke her. That stupid half-smirk he used when he was feeling clever. The one he'd given her on their honeymoon when he'd carried her across the threshold. She'd once believed it belonged to her. Now she didn't know who he was giving it to. Katie forced herself to breathe. She couldn't run. Not yet. She needed to understand what she was seeing. What this was. She turned to the masked woman beside her, the one who'd guided her here. Who is that? She asked, nodding toward Angelica, keeping her voice steady. The woman followed her gaze, then smiled behind her mask. Ah, that's Dahlia. She's one of the favorites. Favorites? She's been here longer than most. Has a talent for helping people forget themselves. Katie nearly laughed. Of course Angelica had a fake name. Of course she was a favorite. Everything about her had always been performance, her warmth, her wit, her bad girl charm. And she had played Katie perfectly. The woman beside her touched her hand gently. First night can be overwhelming. Would you like a drink? Katie nodded absently. Champagne, please. As the woman walked away, Katie turned back to the scene at the bar. Roger and Angelica, Dahlia, were no longer there. Her stomach flipped. She scanned the room, her vision darting through masks, half-seen faces, shadowy corners. Where had they gone? She stood, moved through the crowd, forcing her body to stay graceful, calm. She passed velvet rooms with parted curtains, flickering candlelight and murmurs of pleasure. But she wasn't here for voyeurism. She was here for truth. And then she heard it. A voice, Roger's voice, low and unmistakable, floating from behind a heavy black curtain. She suspects something. I'm handling it. Katie's pulse stopped. I told you this would get messy, Angelica said. You didn't say it would be this fast, Roger replied, a trace of irritation in his tone. She found the hotel receipt. She always notices everything, even when she pretends not to. She was never as blind as you thought, Angelica said with a dark chuckle. Katie pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding so loudly she thought they might hear it. Their words were soft but clear. The truth she had been chasing wasn't just peeking through now. It was spilling out. I need more time, Roger said. If she finds out what we did with the money, how? Angelica cut him off sharply. She will, if you keep panicking. Katie's breath caught. Money? What money? She remembered the investment account they'd opened 2 years ago. Roger had insisted on managing it himself. She'd agreed. He was good with numbers, and she had been too busy with the kids and her boutique. She'd trusted him. Now her mind reeled. What had they done? We had a plan, Angelica continued. One clean break. No divorce war. No lawyers. Just make her think it was an affair. She'd walk away heartbroken, maybe pissed, but she wouldn't go digging. I think she already is digging. Then we dig faster, Angelica said coldly. Because if she finds out about the offshore account. Katie stepped back so fast her heel clipped the edge of the carpet. The curtain shifted. A flicker of movement. She turned and walked quickly through the hallway, heart hammering. She couldn't be caught, not yet. The woman from earlier appeared beside her like a ghost. Your drink, she said smoothly, offering a crystal flute. Katie took it, hand shaking. I think I need some air. The woman smiled kindly. There's a garden terrace through the west corridor. Follow the jasmine scent. Katie nodded and hurried down the hall. The scent was there, faint but growing stronger. She found the door, pushed it open, and stepped into a small courtyard bathed in silver moonlight. For a moment, she could finally breathe. She leaned against a marble column, champagne untouched in her hand, and tried to make sense of what she'd just heard. It wasn't just about sex. It wasn't just about cheating. They were conspiring against her. Lying. Stealing. The affair was a distraction. A performance meant to break her heart just enough that she wouldn't look closer. So she wouldn't ask about the money. The offshore account. The real betrayal. Katie stared up at the sky, her breath visible in the cold air. She should have crumbled. Cried. Screamed. Instead, something inside her clicked. She wasn't going to walk away. She wasn't going to give them the clean break they wanted. She was going to burn it all down. Quietly. Perfectly. On her terms. And they'd never see her coming. The ink bled like blood. It took 32 minutes for Roger to sign every single document, his hands stiff and reluctant with each signature. Katie sat across the table in the office of her attorney, arms folded, eyes calm. She didn't gloat. She didn't cry. She didn't say a word unless clarification was needed. Roger signed the last page and leaned back in the leather chair like a man freshly buried. His tie hung loosely around his neck, his once perfect posture now slouched. He looked smaller than Katie had ever seen him. Katie, he said quietly, you don't have to destroy me. She tilted her head. You already destroyed yourself. I'm just holding up the mirror. He opened his mouth as if to argue, but their attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Marla Sutton, slid the folder toward her and cut him off. It's done, Marla said. You're officially relinquishing all financial claims, joint properties, business equity, and parental custody. Katie signed her name with fluid grace. Her hand didn't tremble once. Roger stood but hesitated before leaving. You were always the better one. No, Katie said without looking up. I just stopped pretending to be blind. He left without another word. And just like that, she had taken back everything they'd tried to strip from her. Later that day, Katie walked through the house, her house now, touching surfaces with fresh eyes. The windows gleamed. The hardwood felt solid beneath her feet. It wasn't haunted anymore. It wasn't a set in someone else's performance. It was real again. Hers. Her kids. Her sanctuary. Noah and Lucy would be home from school soon. She'd made their favorite dinner, lasagna, garlic knots, and chocolate pudding for dessert. Not because she was trying to mask the cracks in their lives, but because they deserved to feel steady again. In the living room, the TV was paused on a news report. Katie picked up the remote and pressed play. An anonymous source has leaked internal documents detailing illicit financial transfers connected to prominent Manhattan architecture firm Bellamy Rose and Company. Sources confirm Roger Halston, senior partner, is under investigation. She didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She just turned off the TV and walked to the kitchen. But across town, Angelica wasn't going down quite so quietly. She sat alone in a rooftop lounge, swirling a martini glass between her fingers, legs crossed in a high-slit black dress, red-soled heels tapping against the concrete. Her phone buzzed with messages, 2 missed calls from Roger, 1 from a blocked number, and a single text from someone labeled C. She moved faster than expected. You should have handled her. Angelica stared at it, then deleted it without responding. The truth was, Katie had blindsided her. She'd underestimated the quiet girl. The dependable one. The wife who used to tremble at confrontation and bite her lip when she was nervous. Now, Katie had flipped the board mid-game, taken every piece off it and rewritten the rules. Angelica couldn't decide whether to feel enraged or impressed. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a slim black notebook, the kind she never let anyone touch. Inside were handwritten names. Contacts, favors, debts. A network built carefully over years of quiet whispers and exchanged secrets. She turned to the page marked Cage. Then, beneath it, wrote, Threat level, escalated. And just below that, checkmate pending. Meanwhile, Katie was sitting at the kitchen table helping Lucy with her spelling words. Noah was in the den building a cardboard robot, and the scent of garlic and tomato filled the house. The doorbell rang. Katie's shoulders tensed, just slightly. She wasn't expecting anyone. She opened the door to find a small man in a delivery uniform holding a padded envelope. Package for Catherine Halston? Yes. He handed it over and left without another word. She closed the door and studied the envelope. No return address. No sender. Inside was a flash drive. She hesitated, then slid it into the side of her laptop and opened the contents. A single video file. No name. Just a timestamp. She pressed play. The footage was grainy, shot from a hidden camera. The angle looked familiar, velvet curtains, soft candlelight. The club. In the video, Roger sat across from a man Katie didn't recognize, older, balding, expensive-looking suit. And then Roger said something that made Katie's blood run cold. My wife's not going to be a problem. Once she signs, we make the final move. The assets transfer to Cayman, and she walks away clueless. She's harmless. The man across from him nodded. Good. Because once the shell company is set, we'll route everything through Dahlia. The screen froze on Roger's smug expression. Katie leaned back in her chair, letting the pieces fall into place again. She hadn't uncovered everything. There was more. Layers. Rot beneath rot. And someone had just handed her the shovel. Fire watch in the next episode. As Katie peels back the final layer of the lies she called her marriage, a bigger truth begins to take shape, one that stretches far beyond Roger, far beyond Angelica, and right into the core of her own past. Blood ties, buried names, and a web of deception that didn't just start with betrayal. It started with her.